This week's episode is about the number 30 team on the Juggernaut Index, the Buffalo Bills. If we were playing Bill Walsh College Football 95 and you allowed me to run the wishbone with Buffalo's current offensive personnel, I'm confident that I could guide them to a bowl game. My Sega Genesis skills were fairly impressive back in the day. But it's tough to see how anyone could possibly direct the present-day Bills, a team with 3 talented running backs and 0 talented quarterbacks, to a successful season in real life. The triple option attack isn't really viable in today's NFL, so the bone is out. Buffalo can't have Fred Jackson pitching to C.J. Spiller all day, although it sounds awesome. Every team has to throw downfield eventually. Bills head coach Chan Gailey will have to name someone his starting quarterback, and that player will immediately have less job security than anyone in the league. At the moment, the 3 candidates to lead Buffalo's offense in Week 1 are Trent Edwards, Ryan Fitzpatrick, and Brian Brohm. There's very little apparent upside with any of those quarterbacks. Edwards is shell-shocked and injury-prone, Fitzpatrick is inconsistent and inaccurate, and Brohm is, well, we can't exactly say what he is, because he's only had one NFL start. But we can state unequivocally that his one start was awful. Brian Brohm went 17 for 29 against Atlanta in Week 16 last year, throwing 2 interceptions and no touchdown passes. He was sacked twice, his team scored 3 total points, and he finished with just 146 passing yards and a QB rating of 43.2. Basically, the Bills have 3 low-end backup quarterbacks on their roster, and they're without a credible starter. This fact obviously destroys the outlook for the passing game, even though the team has a serious weapon at wide receiver in Lee Evans, a burner with a pair of 1,000-yard seasons to his credit. Behind Evans, however, there's nothing noteworthy in the Buffalo receiver corps. It's ex-sleeper James Hardy, Steve Johnson, Chad Jackson, and UConn rookie Marcus Easley. Given the messy quarterback situation and the presumed emphasis on the ground game, you really have to consider Evans to be a low-ceiling fantasy option, and the rest of Buffalo's wideouts to be no-ceiling options. If it weren't for the interesting collection of names in the Bills' backfield, this team would rank dead last in the 2010 Juggernaut rankings. But there are a couple of pieces here worth noting. Fred Jackson is a max-effort player, coming off a 1,062-yard rushing campaign. Although we should note he gained 20% of those yards against the Colts' junior varsity defense in Week 17. He's a capable pass catcher with 46 receptions who breaks the occasional tackle, and his backstory is delightful. But on the NFL talent spectrum, he's just another guy. Totally ownable, but just another guy. Jackson has clearly usurped Marshawn Lynch's lead role in Buffalo's rushing game. Beast mode is essentially a trade trip and a fabulous interview. But he's not the most dynamic skill player on the roster. When the Bills selected Clemson running back C.J. Spiller with the 9th overall pick in the NFL draft, they finally acquired an elite, high-upside, game-changing talent. Check the tape. He's just an uncommonly skilled player. No, we don't know exactly how Spiller will be deployed in his first season, so if you're targeting him in fantasy, you'll need to have the internal monologue about ceiling versus floor. A responsible guess at his workload would be 15 touches per game, maybe 8 to 12 carries, 4 to 8 targets. You'll see him in the slot on occasion while F. Jax is on the field. Spiller is a sensational athlete with blistering speed with a 4.37 at the combine, ridiculous bounce, great vision, and outstanding hands. At his current mock draft central ADP of 60, he's a solid risk-reward player. The rookie is selected 15 picks ahead of Jackson and 77 picks ahead of Lynch in the typical mock. No Bills are drafted as every week starters. The offensive line is a sketchy group. The unit placed 30th in Jason Cole's O-line ranks, so the Buffalo backs will have to get creative. We should need to tell you to avoid the Bills' defense in standard fantasy leagues. They were horrible against the run last season, ranking next to last in the AFC with 156.3 yards per game, but very good statistically against the pass, 184.3 yards per game and 28 interceptions. When you see an odd imbalance like that, it means that a defense is simply playing a shell game, hiding its flaws from play to play. Great Ds simply stop everything. Buffalo is transitioning to a 3-4 system this season, so there will no doubt be a few hiccups. In IDP formats, you'll still target Paul Poslinski with 110 tackles in 12 games, Jarris Byrd, 9 interceptions and 45 tackles, and George Wilson with 103 tackles. Aaron Schobel registered 10 sacks last year, but he's reportedly undecided about returning for a 10th season and leaning towards retirement. And that's all we've got on the Bills. Don't make us go on. Instead, please predict Ryan Lindell's 2010 PATs in the comments. Best guesser wins the XNM's Fantasy Haven Moses.